It began on an ordinary winter morning at Aurora Terminal until one loyal canine named Shadow broke the silence. His instincts screamed when no alarms did. One bark, one bite into a black suitcase, and suddenly the entire airport froze. What lay inside wasn't a bomb, nor drugs, but something that defied reason itself, a heartbeat where there shouldn't have been one, a miracle or a curse. As snow fell like whispers from heaven, faith collided with science, and one man realized that sometimes God doesn't send angels, he sends dogs. What Shadow uncovered that day would remind the world that miracles still exist, hidden beneath the snow. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments below. Snow fell relentlessly over Aurora Terminal, cloaking the massive glass roof in white silence, the air thick with frost and echoes of distant engines. Officer Ethan Cole tightened his scarf against the cold draft sneaking through the sliding doors. He was in his late 30s, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair showing faint streaks of gray. His eyes, gray like melted steel, carried the quiet fatigue of a man who had seen too much and trusted too little. The lines around his mouth deepened whenever he forced a smile, a habit learned after years of airport patrols where every second could tip between calm and chaos. Ethan had been a police officer for 15 years, 5 of them in the K-9 unit. The scars on his left wrist told of an explosion in Chicago years ago, one that had taken the life of his first K-9 partner and left him with a cautious heart. Beside him walked Shadow, a 5-year-old German shepherd with thick gray-black fur and eyes the color of embered amber. Shadow's steps were measured, deliberate, his head held low but alert. Every movement of his tail betrayed a mixture of discipline and intuition. He was not just trained, he was attuned to danger, to deceit, to the fragile heartbeat of the world. The two had been partners long enough to speak without words. Ethan often thought Shadow could sense what even human technology could not, the tremor of evil, the faint pulse of fear. The terminal glowed under artificial light, polished floors reflecting the world upside down. Passengers hurried through security gates, dragging suitcases like small shadows behind them. Announcements echoed through the cold air. Flight 221 to Denver delayed due to weather conditions. Ethan's boots made a dull sound on the tile, steady, rhythmic, his ritual against monotony. He nodded to a fellow officer at the corner, Officer Ramirez, a stocky man in his 50s whose weathered face and kind eyes softened his gruff tone. Ramirez called out, "Cole, another night of paradise?" Ethan smirked faintly. Paradise with snow and delayed flights. Can't ask for more. The banter was old, a thin veil over the quiet unease every officer carried, the knowledge that safety was always temporary. Shadow's ears twitched. The dog slowed his pace, sniffing the air near the baggage carousel. The scent was faint, metal, rubber, perfume, and something else beneath it, something Ethan couldn't name but Shadow could. The German shepherd's tail stiffened, his pupils narrowing. Ethan frowned. Easy, boy, just another long shift. Yet Shadow didn't relax. Instead, he began to pace along the conveyor belt's edge, his nose brushing the moving steel, inhaling deeply. Ethan followed, his pulse quickening. He had learned to trust Shadow's silence more than any alarm. The air inside Aurora Terminal seemed to shift, heavy with static. The snow outside pressed against the glass walls, dulling the sound of the storm but amplifying every breath inside. A young woman in a crimson coat paused nearby, holding a child's hand, watching with wide eyes as the dog circled. Her name tag read, Sarah Keene, a flight attendant from Delta Airlines, mid-20s, pale skin that reddened in the cold, and hair the color of autumn copper pulled tightly into a bun. Her gentle voice carried both curiosity and anxiety as she asked, "Is something wrong, officer?" Ethan gave a tight smile. "Just routine, ma'am. Keep your distance." Sarah nodded, but her gaze lingered, drawn to Shadow's tense body. The conveyor belt hummed, spitting out a new batch of luggage, black, gray, navy blue, each identical in shape and anonymity. Then, among them, rolled a single black hard case, its surface faintly scratched, a silver tag glinting under fluorescent light. Shadow froze, his ears pricked forward, Ethan's breath caught. "What is it, boy?" he whispered. The dog didn't move, his muscles coiled, nose trembling as if breathing in something alive. Without warning, Shadow lunged. His jaws clamped around the suitcase, teeth sinking deep into synthetic fabric. The sound, a raw, violent rip, echoed through the terminal. Gasps erupted from nearby travelers. Ramirez shouted, "Cole, what the hell?" Ethan yanked the leash. "Shadow, release!" The dog growled, low and guttural, refusing to obey. Passengers backed away, some pulling out phones to record. The conveyor belt shuddered as Shadow's weight tugged at it. Sarah stepped backward, clutching the little boy behind her, eyes wide with fear but also pity. For the dog, for the man, for whatever invisible thing hung between them. Ethan crouched beside Shadow, his voice urgent but calm. "Hey, look at me, buddy." Shadow's eyes flicked toward him, blazing gold beneath the terminal's lights. For a moment, Ethan saw something there. Terror, sorrow, resolve, all at once. It wasn't aggression, it was protection. The dog's body trembled not from fear, but from conviction. Ethan's hand tightened on the leash. Memories flashed. The explosion in Chicago, the smell of burning fur, the silence after his first partner died. He had sworn never to ignore a warning again. The metallic scent grew stronger. Ethan noticed the faintest vibration in the suitcase beneath Shadow's teeth, like a heartbeat under fabric. He froze. "Ramirez," he called quietly, "get Captain Torres down here. Now!" His colleague's laughter died instantly at the tone in Ethan's voice. Ramirez grabbed his radio, speaking in clipped words. The terminal, once filled with chatter, descended into uneasy silence. Even the child beside Sarah stopped fidgeting, staring at the motionless dog. Outside, snow pressed against the glass so heavily that the world beyond looked erased. The faint sound of the storm became a pulse, syncing with the rhythm of the lights overhead. Ethan looked into Shadow's eyes again and saw reflection, not just of the suitcase, but of something deeper. In that golden shimmer, he thought he saw movement, like a shadow inside the shadow, something shifting beneath the surface. He whispered, half to himself, "What are you trying to tell me?" Shadow's growl softened into a low whine. He refused to let go, but eased his stance slightly, his gaze never leaving the black suitcase. Ethan reached out and touched the surface of the case with his gloved hand. It was warm, impossibly warm for something that had come off a plane in a snowstorm. His breath caught in his throat. Then, faintly, from within the suitcase came a sound. So small, it could have been imagined, a muffled thump. Once, twice. Ethan's eyes widened. Shadow barked, a short, sharp sound that made everyone nearby flinch. Sarah gasped, stepping closer despite herself. Did it just move? Ethan didn't answer. He stared at the suitcase, his hand still resting on its surface. Beneath the layers of fabric and metal, something moved again, deliberate and slow, as if answering the dog's call. Snow lashed against the glass walls of Aurora Terminal, thunder rumbling somewhere far above the clouds. For one suspended moment, it felt as though heaven itself was holding its breath. Ethan's heart pounded. Shadow snarled, teeth still locked in defiance. Whatever was inside that suitcase, alive or not, had just changed everything. And then the lights flickered. Red emergency lights bled across the polished floors of Aurora Terminal, transforming the quiet, snowbound night into a scene of trembling anticipation. Sirens wailed in sync with the storm outside, their echoes blurring with the howling wind that beat against the vast glass walls. The air was thick with static and fear. Officer Ethan Cole stood over the black suitcase, his gloved hand frozen mid-air. Shadow, the German shepherd, stayed locked in position beside him, fur bristling, breath visible in the cold artificial light. Around them, passengers had been herded behind security barriers, their anxious murmurs creating a ghostly hum that filled the cavernous hall. Through the chaos entered Captain Maria Torres, her boots striking the marble with the precision of command. She was a woman in her mid-40s, with olive-toned skin and sharp cheekbones that made her seem perpetually alert. Her black hair, streaked with silver, was tied back tightly beneath her navy cap. Torres had built her career on order and instinct, but it was instinct that had once betrayed her. 3 years earlier, a false call at Dallas International had cost her an agent's life. Since then, she had become a woman who distrusted both hesitation and miracles. She approached Ethan with a clipped tone. "What's going on here?" Ethan straightened, his voice steady but his hands shaking slightly. "Shadow detected something in this suitcase. It's warm. There's movement." Torres's eyes narrowed. Movement? She leaned down, pressing the back of her hand against the torn fabric. Her brow furrowed. It's not supposed to be warm, not after a 12-hour flight. Behind her, the bomb squad arrived, 2 men in thick protective suits, helmets gleaming under red light. One of them, Sergeant Liam Frost, tall and angular with a trimmed beard and calm gray eyes, gave a curt nod to Torres. "We'll handle it, Captain." Frost's calm carried authority. He was known for his composure, a man who had diffused over 30 explosive devices yet still carried a quiet grief. His younger brother had been lost in an airport bombing a decade ago. Every alarm since then reopened that scar, but he hid it well beneath discipline and ritual. As Frost and his partner approached the suitcase, Shadow growled, stepping forward defensively. The handler at his side tightened the leash, but Ethan raised a hand. "Easy, boy." The dog's growl faded into a low rumble, eyes never leaving the case. "He thinks it's alive," Ethan said quietly. Frost paused, half amused, half unnerved. "Alive or not, let's make sure it doesn't kill anyone." He lowered a scanning wand, its green light sweeping slowly across the suitcase. The device beeped irregularly, detecting organic matter, heat, and faint electromagnetic pulses. Frost frowned. "That's strange. No explosive trace. But there's organic movement, small scale. Could be a trapped animal." Torres exhaled, sharply. "Who the hell smuggles animals like this?" Her voice echoed off the high ceiling, met only by silence. She turned to Sarah Keene, the red-haired flight attendant who still stood nearby, clutching her young nephew, the boy's eyes wide with innocent fear. "Ma'am, was this bag from your flight?" Sarah shook her head. "No, Captain. I was off duty, just waiting for a friend from Madrid." Her voice trembled slightly, though not from fear alone. Her gaze lingered on the case, a shadow of guilt passing through her eyes, something unsaid. Ethan noticed. Frost gestured to his partner, Technician Howard Lynn, a compact man in his early 30s with pale skin and steady hands that trembled only when idle. Lynn was meticulous, the kind who talked to machines as if they were alive. "Thermal's high," Lynn muttered, watching his handheld monitor. 38 degrees Celsius and climbing. Whatever's inside, it's breathing." His words dropped like stones into the silence. Torres's jaw clenched. "Back up, everyone." Ethan hesitated. "Captain, if it's alive." "Then it's someone's problem," she snapped, though her voice wavered at the edges. Years of procedure screamed against the possibility of mercy, but Ethan knelt anyway, his eyes fixed on Shadow. "You feel it too, don't you, boy?" The German shepherd's ears turned toward him, then back to the case. He gave a soft, mournful whine. Outside, thunder rolled over the snowy airfield. A sudden flicker of lightning illuminated the glass roof, and for a brief second, a narrow shaft of light broke through the snow clouds, piercing directly down onto the suitcase. No one spoke, but every face registered the same shiver. The light looked almost deliberate. Frost exhaled, his breath fogging inside his visor. "On my mark," he said to Lynn. Together they worked the zipper open, centimeter by centimeter. The sound of metal teeth rasping filled the silence. The air smelled faintly metallic, mixed with something organic, fur, damp, and a trace of blood. When the final latch gave way, Frost froze. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. Inside the suitcase, nestled among torn fabric and soaked padding, lay a tiny puppy, no more than a few weeks old, trembling violently. Its fur was matted, a patchwork of gray and brown streaked with dried blood. Its eyes opened weakly, cloudy blue, staring into the harsh fluorescent light. For a moment, no one breathed. Ethan's heart sank as Shadow whined, lowering his head, the tension melting into sorrow. Torres stepped forward slowly, her voice softening. "Someone stuffed this alive?" Frost nodded grimly. "Looks that way." He reached for the puppy gently, but as he lifted it, a strange glimmer caught his eye beneath the lining, a series of glass vials filled with glowing crystalline material. Each vial pulsed faintly, like veins of captured light. Lynn's voice trembled. "Captain, this isn't just cruelty. This is something else." Torres bent closer. "What the hell am I looking at?" Frost carefully pulled back the cloth further, revealing small metal wiring running beneath the fabric, connecting the vials to a palm-sized electronic module blinking in slow intervals. Ethan's gut tightened. "That's not a bomb," he said quietly. "That's something worse." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. "Is it alive?" Torres turned toward her. "What do you mean?" The flight attendant hesitated, shaking her head quickly. "Nothing. It just feels wrong, like it's not supposed to exist." Ethan looked at her sharply. "You've seen something like this before, haven't you?" Sarah didn't answer, her gaze locked on the faint glow beneath the suitcase fabric. The red alarm lights dimmed for a moment, casting long shadows across the floor. Frost set the small puppy on a folded blanket, its breathing shallow but steady. Shadow approached, sniffing gently before lying down beside it, as if shielding it from the cold. Ethan crouched, rubbing the dog's head. "You did good, partner." Torres stood silent for a long time, her gaze moving between the glowing vials and the trembling life before her. The light from above dimmed again, the storm roaring louder. "Get that tech unit in here," she said finally. "We need this contained, now." As Frost and Lynn began sealing the evidence, a low hum filled the terminal, mechanical, rhythmic. Ethan frowned. "What's that sound?" The lights flickered again. The puppy whimpered. And then the electronic module in Frost's hand blinked faster, each pulse syncing with the distant thunder. Torres stepped back. "Is that supposed to—" But her words were cut short as the hum deepened, vibrating through the floor. The vials inside the suitcase glowed brighter, pale blue veins of light snaking along the metal edges. Lynn's monitor beeped frantically. "Captain, it's reacting to something." A burst of static erupted through their radios, followed by a faint voice, distorted, genderless, whispering in fractured syllables. "Do not open again." Everyone froze. Outside, lightning cracked against the glass roof, and for a heartbeat the entire terminal flashed white. The puppy whimpered louder. Shadow growled, stepping forward, hackles rising. Ethan's pulse hammered in his chest. "Captain," he murmured, but Torres didn't respond. She was staring at the suitcase, now glowing faintly from within, as if it held something that was waking up, and then, just as suddenly, the light inside the case went out. Snow lashed against the windows of Aurora Terminal like a living thing, each gust a ghostly scream carried by the storm. Inside, the red emergency lights had dimmed to a steady pulse, bathing the scene in a rhythm that matched the beating of frightened hearts. The bomb squad had sealed the glowing vials into containment cases, but the air remained charged with unease. Ethan Cole stood over the remnants of the black suitcase, his gloves smeared with soot and frost, the weight of what they'd found pressing into his chest like invisible hands. Shadow sat beside him, ears twitching toward the storm beyond the terminal glass, restless. Captain Maria Torres paced a few feet away, her posture taut. Her eyes, normally sharp with authority, now looked haunted. "The readings don't make sense," muttered Howard Lynn, hunched over his monitor. The glow of his screen reflected on his pale face, highlighting the dark circles beneath his eyes. "The sample's temperature is stable at 38 degrees, but the molecular pattern keeps changing. It's rewriting itself." Torres turned sharply. "Rewriting?" Lynn nodded, his voice cracking slightly. "Self-replicating DNA. Adaptive coding. Captain, this isn't chemistry, it's creation." Ethan exchanged a glance with Sergeant Liam Frost, who stood by the table, helmet off now, revealing short-cropped brown hair and a weary expression carved with lines of loss. "That's not possible," Frost said quietly. "Nothing rewrites itself without command." Lynn swallowed hard. "Unless it was designed to." Torres ran a gloved hand over her forehead. "Project Lazarus," she whispered. "That's what the file said, right?" Ethan's brow furrowed. "What file?" Torres hesitated before gesturing toward Dr. Nathan Ward, the airport's emergency biohazard consultant who had arrived minutes earlier. Ward was a lean man in his 50s, with sharp cheekbones and hollow eyes that betrayed too many sleepless nights. His hair was silvered at the temples, his expression grave but oddly fascinated. "It's classified under a defunct military archive," he said. His voice was smooth, clinical, yet carried a quiet tremor of guilt. "The Lazarus Directive, a failed initiative to use synthetic DNA for regenerative cloning, officially shut down 12 years ago." He paused, staring at the faintly glowing sample on the table. Unofficially, someone kept it alive. Shadow growled softly, gaze fixed on the distant service corridor where cold air seeped in through the half-open emergency exit. Torres frowned. What's he hearing? Ethan straightened, gripping the leash. Something outside. Torres shook her head. There's a blizzard out there. But Shadow barked once, loud and sharp. Ethan's pulse quickened. He's picking up a scent. Before anyone could stop him, Shadow lunged toward the exit, dragging Ethan behind. Snow burst into the terminal like a wave. As the door slammed open, the cold cut through him, instantly, biting into his lungs. Shadow, heel! But the dog ignored him, charging into the storm. Ethan followed, boots sinking into the snow. The night was white chaos, wind howling, flakes swirling like ash. He could barely see a few meters ahead. Through the blur, a figure moved, slender, fast, and wearing a white coat that whipped violently in the wind. The woman stumbled, nearly falling, then pushed herself forward, one hand clutching her chest. Ethan caught a glimpse of her face under the flickering security light. Pale, almost translucent skin, eyes dark as obsidian. She was in her early 30s, tall and thin, her movements graceful but desperate. Around her wrist, a black tattoo spiraled like a serpent devouring its own tail. Ethan's breath hitched, the same symbol he had seen years ago in a case file marked restricted, Babylonian relic symbolism. Stop! Police! He shouted, his voice lost in the wind. The woman turned slightly, her expression a strange mix of defiance and sorrow. You shouldn't have opened it, she called back, her voice eerily calm, carried on the storm like an echo from another realm. Shadow barked again, closing the distance. The woman's eyes met his, something ancient flickering in them, like recognition. Ethan caught up just as Shadow lunged. The dog stopped short, growling, blocking her path but not attacking. The woman raised her trembling hands. I'm not your enemy, she said. Her accent was faintly Eastern European, her tone melodic but heavy with grief. You don't understand what's waking. Ethan aimed his flashlight at her, breath visible in white puffs. Then make me understand. What's Project Lazarus? The woman hesitated. It's not a project anymore. It's evolution. Her gaze flicked past him toward the terminal's glowing lights. And you've already triggered it. Behind them, Captain Torres's voice crackled over the radio, distorted by static. Cole, report, what's happening? Ethan pressed the transmitter. We have a suspect, female, early 30s, lab coat, tattoo on left wrist, says Lazarus is active. Silence answered. The signal was dead. The woman backed up a step. If you take me in, they'll kill me before I speak. You opened something that wasn't supposed to breathe again. Ethan frowned. What was inside that suitcase? She looked at him steadily. Not what? Who? The words sank into him like ice. He felt Shadow's body tense beside him. That puppy, he began, but she cut him off softly. Wasn't born. It was built. The snow swirled harder, coating their faces in frost. For a moment, time seemed suspended. The woman took another step back. My name is Dr. Elise Moravec, she said quietly. I helped create Lazarus before I realized what we were resurrecting. Ethan stared at her, struggling to process the storm of revelation. You created that thing? Her eyes flashed with pain. I tried to destroy it, but they found me first. A sudden beam of light cut through the storm, Torres and Frost, emerging from the terminal with flashlights and sidearms raised. Freeze! Torres shouted. Elise closed her eyes briefly. You shouldn't have brought them. Before Ethan could react, the ground trembled, a deep vibration beneath the snow, followed by a dull, cracking sound. The light from the terminal flickered. From somewhere behind, Elise came a faint metallic hum, like machinery stirring under ice. She whispered, It's too late. The snow exploded upward in a burst of white as something beneath the ground shifted. A faint blue glow seeped through the drifts, pulsing in rhythm with the storm. Shadow barked furiously, pulling against his leash. Ethan turned, shielding his eyes from the glare. Torres reached his side, voice tight. What's going on? Elise stared into the distance. The code found a new host. Her breath formed ghosts in the air. And it's not human. A sound rose then. Not thunder, not wind, but a low, resonant heartbeat echoing from beneath the frozen ground. Ethan felt it reverberate through his chest. The woman's voice barely carried over the storm. "You've woken the soul that shouldn't exist." And then from the snow, something answered. The storm had grown monstrous by the time the team reached the northern airfield perimeter. Snow swirled in relentless spirals, white and merciless, erasing all lines between sky and ground. The wind roared through the hangars like a choir of lost souls. Ethan Cole could barely see 10 feet ahead. His breath came in ragged bursts, crystallizing in the freezing air. Shadow moved before him, a blur of gray and black against the whirling frost, every muscle taut and alert. The dog's fur was matted with snow, but his amber eyes burned bright, focused on the faint red glimmer flickering through the storm. Captain Torres followed close behind, her heavy coat whipping violently in the wind, her gloved hand gripping a flare that cast trembling light across the field. Her face was pale, the sharp lines of discipline softened by the cold and the fear she refused to admit. Beside her trudged Sergeant Frost, his weapon drawn, jaw clenched. "Signals coming from Sector 7, he shouted over the wind. "It's moving!" Ethan's heart pounded. Not fast enough. He knew what Shadow was tracking, the faint chemical scent, the fear mixed with determination, the scent of someone running from their own sins. Through the white haze ahead, a figure staggered. Lena Miles. She was younger than Ethan had expected, perhaps in her late 20s, tall but thin, her frame trembling under a white parka torn at the shoulder. Her dark hair whipped across her face, her eyes wild and red from the cold. She clutched a device glowing with crimson light, its pulse steady as a heartbeat. Her lips were cracked, her skin ghostly under the frost. Lena had once been a biologist, part of the same circle as Elise Moravec, but her loyalty had turned dark. She had seen in Lazarus not blasphemy, but immortality. Shadow barked sharply and lunged forward. The snow churned as Ethan sprinted after him, boots slipping on the ice. "Lena," he yelled, "stop! You don't have to run." But she did not stop. Her voice carried faintly through the storm, strange and fragile. "You don't understand. None of you do. It's already awake." She stumbled, falling to her knees. The device slipped from her hand, spinning across the ice. The red glow illuminated the flakes around it like droplets of blood. Shadow reached her first, jaws clamping around her sleeve. He didn't bite to wound, only to stop her. The woman screamed, more in shock than pain, and dropped face first into the snow. Ethan grabbed her by the arm, pulling her up. Her body was shaking violently, from cold and fear alike. "Lazarus," she whispered. "It's not a code anymore. It's a pulse. It's rewriting every living thing it touches." Torres arrived, panting, snow clinging to her lashes. "You're under arrest," she barked. But her voice faltered as she noticed the red device now pulsing faster on the ground. Sergeant Frost bent down, his gloved fingers brushing snow off its surface. The badges. Screen blinked to life, displaying a network of dots, hundreds of red nodes connected by thin lines. They pulsed in rhythm, synchronized like the beat of a heart. Frost's face blanched. "These aren't just signals," he murmured. "They're, locations." Lena laughed weakly, a sound like glass breaking. "All of them alive, all of them carrying the seed." Ethan stared at her. "You infected people?" "Not people," she said, her eyes hollow. "Animals, plants, anything capable of replication. Lazarus is in the bloodstream of the world now." Torres stepped closer, fury rising in her voice. "You unleashed this?" Lena looked up at her, unflinching. "I didn't unleash it. I was chosen by it." Her pupils were dilated, almost black, and for the first time Ethan saw faint veins glowing beneath her skin, pale blue like the light in the vials. The snow around them thickened, swirling faster. Shadow began barking toward the sky, his tail rigid. Frost looked up. "What the hell?" The clouds above them weren't just storm clouds anymore. They pulsed faintly, mirroring the same rhythm as the red lights on the device. Every flash of lightning seemed to follow the pattern of a living pulse. Lena raised her trembling hands. "You see it now, don't you? It's alive and it's reaching for us." Torres shouted, "Frost, shut that thing down!" The sergeant pulled a knife from his belt and struck the device's casing. Sparks erupted. The screen flickered, then flared brighter. A faint hum vibrated through the ground beneath them, the same vibration Ethan had felt hours before at the terminal. Shadow growled, circling the device, his fur bristling. The hum deepened, becoming a low, resonant sound that felt more felt than heard. The snow lifted from the ground, swirling around them in a spiral of light and frost. Lena's face twisted with awe and terror. "You can't kill it," she cried. "It's everywhere now." Ethan grabbed her shoulders. "What is it after?" "Continuity," she whispered. "It doesn't want to end. It wants to be everything." The hum grew to a roar, the red device shaking violently. Frost backed away, pulling Torres with him. "It's going critical," he yelled. "Everyone down!" Ethan threw himself over Lena and Shadow as the device exploded, not with fire, but with light. A wave of red-white energy surged through the blizzard, turning every snowflake into glowing embers for a brief instant. Then, silence. When Ethan opened his eyes, the storm had stopped. Snow fell softly again, gentle, almost peaceful. Lena lay motionless in his arms. The veins under her skin no longer glowed. Torres crawled closer, her breath ragged. "Is she dead?" Ethan checked her pulse. "No," he said slowly. "She's changing." Frost crouched beside them, scanning her face. Her pupils flickered, shifting colors from black to gray to a faint shimmering blue. Her breathing steadied unnaturally. Shadow whimpered, backing away slightly, uneasy. Torres looked at Ethan. "What the hell is happening to her?" Ethan shook his head, eyes wide. "I think the explosion didn't kill the signal." He pointed upward. The clouds, once red and violent, now glowed faintly blue, the same hue as Lena's veins. Torres pressed her radio, but it emitted only static. "We've lost comms," she said. Frost swore under his breath. "We need to get her inside before hypothermia sets in." Ethan nodded. "If it's still human hypothermia." They lifted Lena onto a stretcher Frost retrieved from the vehicle, moving through the quiet snow. Shadow followed behind, head low, his paws leaving perfect prints in the unbroken white. Yet as Ethan glanced back, he noticed something strange. Every step Lena's limp hand brushed against the snow, the flakes around her melted instantly, revealing the faint shimmer of red light beneath the surface. He stopped walking, a chill that had nothing to do with the cold running down his spine. "Captain," he said softly, "the ground's still pulsing." Torres turned to him. "What do you mean?" Ethan crouched, brushing away the snow with his glove. Beneath it, the earth glowed faintly. From somewhere deep below, something answered with a sound, a slow, deliberate thump, like a heartbeat frozen under miles of ice. Ethan looked at Torres, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's not done." The storm had passed like a fever breaking in the body of the earth. By dawn, the sky opened, pale gold spilling across a field of shattered white. The silence that followed was not peace, but exhaustion, the kind that comes when something ancient exhales after centuries of restraint. Aurora Terminal stood still under a delicate crust of frost, its glass roof glittering like frozen tears. The world outside had not yet learned what had happened here, but the air carried a feeling, a whisper that something beneath the snow was still alive. Ethan Cole sat inside the medical wing, a converted lounge now filled with the scent of antiseptic and thawing metal. He looked older than he had the day before, though only a single night had passed. His short dark hair was damp with melted snow, the corners of his uniform scorched from the energy blast. Shadow lay beside him, his head resting near the edge of the cot. The dog's coat was still thick with ice that refused to melt, but his breathing was even and strong. Near the heater, wrapped in a fleece blanket, the small puppy rescued from the suitcase stirred faintly, its chest rising with fragile rhythm. Captain Maria Torres stood near the window. Arms folded, her uniform jacket hung loosely, her cap discarded on the counter. Without the rigid formality of command, she seemed smaller, more human, her olive skin drawn pale by sleepless hours, her sharp eyes dimmed by thoughts she would never admit aloud. "The press is already calling it divine intervention," she said quietly, her breath fogging against the glass. "They're saying your dog stopped the end of the world." Ethan gave a tired smile. "He didn't stop it. He just gave us a little more time." Torres turned toward him. "That woman, Lena Miles, her body's stable, but—" She hesitated, eyes narrowing. "The scans don't make sense. Her cellular structure is rebuilding. Slower now, but different. Dr. Ward says it's like watching evolution speed up under a microscope." At the far end of the room, Dr. Nathan Ward hunched over a portable diagnostic unit, his thin frame silhouetted against the flickering monitors. His eyes, always sunken, always too aware, studied Lena's vitals with a mix of fear and fascination. The woman lay motionless in the adjoining room, wrapped in silver insulation, her skin still faintly luminescent beneath the pale hospital light. Ward's voice was low when he finally spoke. The organism didn't die. It integrated. She's neither host nor victim now. She's part of it. Torres shivered. And the signal? Ward adjusted his glasses. Gone from our instruments, but not gone. I think it went somewhere deeper. His tone dropped further, like it found another frequency to hide in. Ethan looked down at Shadow, who twitched in his sleep. The dog's fur shimmered briefly under the warm light, a faint silver sheen like snow reflecting sunlight. He still senses it, Ethan said softly. Even in here. Torres rubbed her temples. I've got Homeland breathing down my neck, 3 agencies demanding reports, and I can't even explain what it was. A virus? A code? A spirit? Ward glanced at her. Maybe all 3. The ancient myth said the breath of life was a code, a divine pattern. Maybe Lazarus just rediscovered it. Before Torres could respond, the door opened and Sarah Keene entered, her red hair now unbound, damp from melted snow. The flight attendant had stayed behind to help with the civilians, though her pale, freckled face betrayed the trauma of the night. In her arms, she carried a thermos of hot coffee. They're asking if we're closing the terminal, she said quietly. Reporters are camped outside the gates. Torres sighed. Tell them we're decontaminating for safety, and keep them far from Hangar 7. Sarah nodded, then hesitated. Her gaze shifted to the sleeping puppy. Is it true, she asked softly, that it came from the suitcase? Ethan nodded. It survived what nothing else should have. He reached down, stroking Shadow's head, and Shadow hasn't left its side since. Sarah knelt near the puppy, her fingers trembling as she brushed its fur. It's warm, she whispered. Warmer than it should be. Ward joined them, his eyes narrowing as he examined the small creature. Its temperature's been rising since dawn, he murmured. Almost human levels now. He took a small scanner from his pocket and passed it slowly over the puppy's body. The device beeped softly, then froze. Ward's expression darkened. That can't be right. Torres crossed her arms. What? He looked up, his voice barely audible. It's emitting a signal. Ethan frowned. Like the Lazarus frequency? Similar, Ward said. But this one isn't transmitting. It's receiving. The room fell silent. Outside, the snow glowed faintly gold as the first sunlight broke through the clouds. Sarah's reflection shimmered against the glass like a ghost of warmth in a world of frost. Torres finally spoke. So you're saying it's listening to something? Ward nodded. Or someone. A faint whimper broke the tension. The puppy stirred, its tiny paw pressing against Shadow's side. The older dog's eyes opened instantly, alert but calm. He sniffed the air, then rested his muzzle gently over the smaller creature. The gesture was protective, instinctive. Ethan felt his throat tighten at the sight. Ward's monitor beeped again, but now the sound was slower, rhythmic, like a heartbeat syncing with another. It's stabilizing, he said softly. Almost peaceful. Torres stepped closer to the window. The storm had cleared completely, revealing a sun that seemed too bright for a world that had nearly ended. She spoke without turning around. You ever wonder, Cole, if maybe God doesn't speak in words? Maybe he speaks in patterns, through storms, through creatures like yours? Ethan looked at Shadow and then at the tiny dog breathing beside him. Maybe, he said. Or maybe he just wanted to remind us that not all creation ends in destruction. Sarah smiled faintly, though her eyes glistened. Then maybe that little one's the world's second chance. Ward's voice was distant, almost reverent. Or its next beginning. No one replied. The heater hummed softly, the only sound in the quiet room. Ethan rose, stretching stiffly. Come on, partner, he murmured to Shadow. The German shepherd stood, stretching his long frame, then trotted to the door. Ethan turned back to Torres. You'll handle the reports? She smirked tiredly. You mean the fiction we'll have to sell? Yeah, I'll make it sound human enough. Ethan nodded. Good luck with that. He opened the door, the cold air brushing his face like a benediction. Outside, the world glittered, frozen but alive. He walked across the snow with Shadow at his side, their shadows stretching long in the morning light. Behind them, inside the warmth of the terminal, the puppy whimpered again, a soft, almost musical sound that lingered in the air. Ethan paused, looking back. Through the window, the sun refracted across the melting ice, casting a halo of color, a fragile rainbow hovering above the frost. He whispered to himself, the warmth beneath the snow. And for the first time since the storm began, he believed the world might still heal. Sometimes, miracles don't arrive with thunder or light. They whisper softly, through a loyal dog standing in the snow, through a heartbeat that refuses to stop, or through a morning sun that still dares to rise after the longest night. Maybe God doesn't always speak in words. Maybe he speaks through acts of loyalty, compassion, and courage, the kind we often overlook in our rush through everyday life. The story of Ethan and Shadow reminds us that even in the coldest storms, warmth still lives beneath the snow. Somewhere in your life, there's a shadow, a soul that refuses to give up on you, or perhaps a light you're meant to follow. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share it with someone who needs a reminder that faith and goodness still exist. Leave a comment about what you believe miracles look like in your life. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of hope, courage, and redemption, and may God bless you and your loved ones wherever you are with peace and protection tonight.